Okay, so yesterday we gave a little demo of a very simple app in DFINITY, and what I'd like to show you next is the UI. So this is the instructions here. Basically, this was actually on a separate page. The same thing up to this. And basically what you just do is a typical Node.js npm start. And let me show you that. I think this is it. Whoop. Okay. So you can see here that we just typed npm start and it just started a little Node.js app. And I did this from the, what directory did I do this from? It was the hello directory, which is what you'd expect. And what it does is, let me bring this up. So this is our directory of things, of files. Let me show you. Let me get to it. Here we go. So we're not in declarations, we'd be in source, and I think it's in hello assets. So you look at source here, I think this is, you have your index HTML, and that's going to produce our UI, and it's going to call the, we've got the button push here, and I'm going to demonstrate this. Click me button. So if you look at the JavaScript, you can see they have they're importing the declarations from hello, and then get element by ID, click me button, and the listener. So this is basically, this listens to the click me button, and what it's going to do is it is going to call the greeting canister, the hello canister with the greeting method rather, and then it's going to set the value from the element. This is your typical HTML. You're going to get the greeting element in HTML. In the HTML file, you're going to set the text to what comes back from the canister. That's all it is. Let me show you something else. Let me see. No, that's simply the assets. But it has to include those assets, obviously, to have the well, before I continue, you probably want to see it. See what we're doing here. Let's see, I think it's this one. Here we go. So let me go to that. And it's simply this. 8080, localhost 8080. You can put your name. I can say, let's refresh this. Okay, so I can say viewers and click me. And there we go. And it's going to call viewers. So it's basically going to get the click. It's going to be listening for that click. It's going to call the canister function just like we called it manually. in the previous video and return it and set this element in the screen to what we get back. Very simple. Let's see. So that's basically how that works. And the next thing I want to talk about here is, actually before I go on to some of the other languages, I want to, first of all, if you're a developer, they offer you 3 languages right now. Mokoto, which is what we did it in, that's the natural language of this project. You can write in Rust if you're a Rust person. And then there's this Candid, and basically it's an interface. It defines the interface. So let me show you. Let me get the right thing up. Let me get to it, and let's see what we got. I think it's in here. See if it's in here. Okay. So this is an example of Candid. It's defining the service with greet, and it generates some other, the TypeScript, and we looked at these last night, but this is a little bit more. So this is all the basically stuff that connects, I believe, the definition to the actual code. So anyway, that's a very interesting thing that lets us define the language. If you look at what is Candid, so the way they define it is, it's an interface definition language. It defines how you're going to talk to the canister, what method you have, you know, what it takes, what it, you know, all that kind of thing. So think of it similar. It's just like in Java, if you create an interface and then you use that to define your classes, to create your classes. That's all it is. It's just defining. It's saying here that we have an add method, and it takes a number, and a get, which does, you know, return, you know, does a query. So it matches. I have not looked at the actual, so the simplest, the method names, methods. So this is empty, so saying it doesn't return anything, which is kind of interesting when you're talking about a subtract. But it can, maybe it's holding it internally. In our case, let me go back to that. So let me see, make sure you can see this. Let's see if I bring that up. Yeah, you can see here that it takes text and it returns text. That's it. But that's only one. I mean, that is kind of, I think, kind of separate from the Rust or the Mokoto. And I would like to go through example, a similar example of what we did. Now it has its own, remember in Rust we talked about palettes and, let's see, things of that nature. Essentially they're classes and packages and so forth. So what we are going to do, what I'd like to do is, not today, but probably, as we're going through this, I'd like to go through this similar example in Rust and what the difference is. So, it uses cargo, as we've seen cargo before, particularly with polka dot. So they're going to give it, we're going to go through this. So, as I said, Mokoto is the language we looked at so far. It is their natural language. It is very, you can see it's relatively straightforward. They pretty straightforward object-oriented type of thing. They deal with both synchronous and asynchronous with the await. And it's the native language of these canisters. So we're going to go through this in more detail as well. But anyway, my goal with today was to kind of relate, look at the interface and relate it to some of the files we looked at yesterday, and to mention some of the other, that Rust is an option, and it's an option that we should look at. The one thing also with front end is you have, of course, this Candid, just as we use the bare bones where it defines the methods, but you can also use things you're used to in doing front ends like HTML, JavaScript, React.js, React and TypeScript. So again, these are the tools that for if you're going to work on the blockchain as a developer that you need to get familiar with. Now, one thing I noticed, let's see, Mokoto guide, error let's see, I don't know if this, see if it even has it. Most of the stuff we looked at had stuff with transactions, and this is the compiler reference. Here's the language script reference. So this defines the different things, types, operators, relational operators, all the types of things you'd have for any language. So that, imports, libraries, so this is the basic language stuff. Here I'm just trying to see if this does not look, could be wrong, I haven't found it yet. When we looked at Solidity, when we looked at Ink and the languages we had been looking at in more traditional blockchains, they all have built in to deal with transfers. This does not seem to have that. I think they do their economics a little different. I think there may be a charge that you pay to host things, canisters and things like that. But anyway, so we now understand how we tie the back end to a web front end through the Candid definitions. We use that example that we looked at used HTML, and then in the back end, and then use JavaScript, that the HTML call to actually call the canister and produce the result. And what we've also seen today is there are multiple language options. The one that obviously they support the most is their Motoko language, and they even have a little playground here. So we might want to take a look at that. But anyway, hopefully this has been helpful. If it has, please subscribe to the channel, give a like, ring the bell to get the future videos, and tell your friends about it if it's something they're interested in. And I will speak to you next time. Take care.